We like to say we want strong women in our lives, right? That's until their strength mirrors the very power that we've been taught as men to monopolize. Until their voice, it doesn't need our permission to speak. Or until their self-worth doesn't really orbit our approval anymore. And then suddenly what we called admiration starts to feel a lot like intimidation. Because equality isn't just a concept, it's exposure. It reveals where we've been depending on control to feel confident. The truth is, many men don't fear women's empowerment. What we fear is what it reveals about our own disempowerment. Because once equality shows up, performance no longer hides us anymore. Here at Bintegers, we believe that equality doesn't shrink men, it refines them. Because integrity cannot survive hierarchy, and intimacy, it can't breathe through control. Real men don't compete with women, they collaborate with women, not from guilt, not from surrender, but from the power that comes with our common shared humanity. See, when we rise together, strength stops being a contest, and now it becomes more of a conversation. For generations, I would say, men were raised on this one-dimensional story of power. I mean, we were taught that leadership, it really meant being above it all, right? That masculinity meant being unchallenged, and that a woman's independence was really more of an inconvenience, but not really an invitation. And so we built our confidence on contrast, right? On being more than, stronger than, smarter than, even faster than. Well, what happens when equality removes that pedestal? When partnership replaces patriarchy? Or when the mirror that we once stood above starts actually standing beside us? See, that's when the fear shows up. Not because we're losing power, but because we're losing the illusion. Equality threatens the man who's never felt secure in himself to begin with. Because when you've defined your worth by comparison, mutuality feels a lot like erasure now. And when you've mistaken dominance for direction or collaboration, that very collaboration feels like chaos. And when you've relied on control to feel important, partnership now feels a lot like punishment. And that's why so many men misread empowered women as aggressive or as too much, right? Because they've never really met their own softness without the shame. They've never learned that strength and surrender can coexist in the same space. And until we do realize that, we'll keep calling equality emasculation, because we don't yet know what maturity feels like. If you grew up watching men lead through dominance, equality looks very much like loss then, because you've been conditioned to believe that your worth depends really on being needed. And when women stop needing you for survival, you might tend to panic, because now the question isn't, can I protect her? It's, can I actually meet her? And that's a completely different kind of power there, because it's one that's built on reciprocity and not on rescuing another individual. And the problem isn't that women are rising. The problem is that it's men who, not knowing who they are without the power imbalance that once defined them, I think. See, most of us, we don't realize how deeply the myth of superiority really runs through our veins. It's in the jokes that we tell, for example, or the ways that we interrupt, right? The discomfort that we feel when a woman holds authority that we can't control. And so we'll say things like, oh goodness, she's intimidating, right? Especially when what we really mean is, she doesn't need me anymore to validate her. And so we label boundaries as attitude, and we confuse confidence with competition. And then we make their independence about our insecurity. And that's what equality exposes. Not weakness, but the unfinished healing process that we're in. And there's a reason I think that many men double down when they feel equality rising up. It's not arrogance, I think, as much as it is anxiety, because in their mind, equality means irrelevance. See, they were taught to equate worth with being the head or the provider, the fixer. So when someone else shares that power, it feels like an identity crisis for them. And that's because we were never taught the difference between the role that one has and their worth. See, your role might change, but your worth never changes. The man who fears equality doesn't actually fear the balance. I think he fears more so being unseen without superiority, because he's never really been taught how to feel significant through sincerity. And that's where integrity comes in, I would say. Integrity says, I don't need to be above you to be of value. I don't need to be the lead to be loved, or I don't need to control to contribute in this dynamic. That's manhood at peace there. Power that doesn't need any proof. And it's a kind of manhood that I would say this world is really starving for. Because equality doesn't emasculate you, it emancipates you. It frees you from having to perform strength at the expense of connection. And further, it lets you stop pretending that leadership means knowing everything. It in essence invites you to learn, to listen, to let go of the pressure of always being right? But equality is not comfortable work though, because it doesn't just challenge systems, it confronts stories. The story that said, for example, that your masculinity depends on dominance, or the story that said your emotions make you weak. The story that said that partnership really means compromise instead of completion. See, these stories raise boys to be competitors instead of companions. And that's why I would say so many men are brilliant at managing, but they're broken at mutuality. We were never shown how to share power without losing our identity. And I think what we were shown is how to fight for it, but not how to flow with it. And that's why this conversation matters so immensely, not because men are villains, but because most of us men are uninitiated. We've been taught to lead externally without ever being led internally. We've been given privilege, but not permission. We've been given power without learning how to be present. And until we learn that presence, equality will always feel like an attack. Because when you're disconnected from yourself and from your partnership, that partnership feels a lot like pressure. You can't receive what you haven't cultivated within in the first place. And that's why equality really starts as an inner practice, not a political external one. If you can't honor the feminine within you, your own capacity, for example, to feel or to nurture or to create, you'll always then resent it in others. So what does it look like when a man embraces equality? It looks like curiosity instead of control. It sounds like collaboration instead of correction. It feels like freedom instead of fear, right? He doesn't shrink from women's strength. He actually celebrates it. He doesn't interpret boundaries as rejection as much as he sees them as clarity. And he doesn't need to dominate. He actually desires alignment. See, that's the man who's unlearning the lie that power is this kind of a pie, that someone's slice diminishes, in essence, his own power pool. Because in real partnership, Power multiplies. It doesn't divide, does it? This is the evolution, I would say, of manhood. Not from dominance to passivity, but from defensiveness to one's dignity. It's the courage to, in essence, say, your strength doesn't threaten me, it strengthens us collectively. It's realizing that equality isn't competition, it's completion. It's what happens when two whole humans meet without needing this hierarchy to feel safe. That's the kind of power, I think, that cannot be canceled. Because it's not performative, it's an embodied variety. And that's exactly what I am going to be unpacking inside a new course on my website, In the Ashes of the Alpha Male. It's a course where we learn how to lead without dominating, how to stand in our own strength without shadowing someone else's light. And so this foundational course will help you identify the conditioning that made you equate superiority with security. And we'll do a deeper dive in the midst of this course on how to build partnership from presence and not from pride. See, you can find this course at Bintegers.com, because the real alpha doesn't have to compete. He actually cultivates. See, the men who fear equality don't need shame. They need initiation. They need to remember that leadership isn't a throne. It's a trust. That worth isn't positional. Worth is personal. And that partnership isn't a threat. It's really the proof of maturity. Because when we stop fighting for control, it's then that we start finding connection. And that's the turning point there, where fear finally becomes freedom. So, if you want to measure your growth, I would say don't look at how many people listen to you. Look at how well you listen to those around you. Don't measure how many are following you. Measure how many are flourishing around you because you were there. That's what makes a man safe, not superior. That's what makes him a leader, not necessarily a legend. Because equality does not erase greatness. Equality multiplies it. It builds worth where both can actually rise together, where strength is shared and not felt like it's stolen, right? That's what manhood looks like when it's no longer afraid of that balance. And that's where we're going to be going next, because in our next episode, we're going to explore how once you stop fearing equality, the next temptation that comes in is really disguise, right? The temptation to perform power instead of embody it. So that's episode 11 tomorrow. Power without presence is just performance, is what I titled that one. So tune in tomorrow for that episode. Thank you for listening. Drop me your comments, drop me your insights, questions down below. See you in tomorrow's episode.